Hey folks, this is Yuri Karasawa, 12 NPB team previews in 12 days, and today it is time for the Hiroshima Toyo Carp. Last year they went 68-70-5 to finish in 4th place in the Central League, but that's actually a little bit misleading because for much of the year they were in the pennant race, but a brutal collapse in September made them not only miss the pennant, but not even make the playoffs altogether. But up until September, they were right there neck and neck with the Yomiuri Giants and Hanshin Tigers. They were punching well above their weight, but it all came crumbling down over the last month. And a big reason for that was the fact that they had an OPS plus as a team of 85. Now, 100 is league average, so 15% below average offensively is not going to cut it. However, they were very good with a 114 ERA plus as well as 12 defensive runs saved. So good pitching and good defense. Now, what did this team do over the winter? Well, they brought in Johan Dominguez, a right-handed pitcher. He expects to slide into the back end of the rotation or perhaps the bullpen. We'll have to wait and see. Kenya Suzuki, a submarine pitcher from the Nippon Ham Fighters, comes over in the active player draft, so a little bit of depth there. Elleris Montero, a first baseman who was once a top prospect with the Colorado Rockies. He is hopefully going to be this team's starting first baseman, add some much-needed power. And then Sandro Fabian is another notable name. They signed him on a 3-year deal. He had experience, with the San Francisco Giants in the upper minors, and then he made his MLB debut with the Texas Rangers last year. But it's pretty rare for a first-year foreigner to get a multi-year deal. So they're definitely kind of banking on Fabian as more of a long-term project. Even if he doesn't pan out in 2025, maybe they can develop him to adjust well to Japanese baseball. However, there are also some notable subtractions. Aaron Curry, who had once considered going to MLB, he ends up exercising his domestic free agency rights to head over to the Oryx Buffaloes. Curry was a guy who was a anchor in the top of the rotation for the last 6-7 years. So no longer having Curry definitely leaves a hole in that rotation. Yusuke Nomura, who was a top starter once upon a time, like almost 10 years ago at this point, he ended up retiring. And then they lost, a couple of other foreigners like Thomas Hatch, Robert Corneal, and Jake Shiner, who, none of them really were able to leave a lasting impact in NPB, unfortunately. 2024 NPB Draft, so they nominate Rui Munayama with their first pick, but they lose the lottery for him. So Munayama, this was an interesting pick, kind of signaling that they were willing to move Masaya Yano, who just won the Gold Glove. They were willing to move him to second base just to get this high-end prospect from Meiji University in Munayama, but they lose the lottery, and then they end up pivoting to Tai Sasaki, who is more of a power-hitting third baseman, a guy who, maybe will take a little bit more time to get ready, but definitely could provide some pop either later this year or next year, hopefully. Ryunosuke Sato in the second round, also pretty interesting. Not really a hard thrower, but the fastball kind of has good ride, and it gets more swing and miss than you would expect. Pretty good slider and cutter off of that as well, so maybe we see him helping out in the pitching staff sometime this season. 2024 hitting leaders, minimum of 100 plate appearances. You see the lackluster offense here. I mean, there just isn't much in the way of high-end talent. Shogo Sakakura is the leader here with 12 home runs and a 127 OPS plus. He is their backstop, the face of this franchise right now ever since Seiya Suzuki left. A guy who, one of the few who has been able to actually produce consistently offensively. He had a bad first half last year, but really turned it on in the second half. He kind of splits time between catcher and first base as well, so keeping that bat of his in the lineup is very important. Takayoshi Noma, more of a veteran, very good on-base percentage, not much of a slugger. You see the only one home run there, but a 113 OPS plus for him. Shogo Akiyama came back to Japan a couple years ago after an unsuccessful stint in MLB. Back when he was with the Seibu Lions, a lot of achievements, a lot of memorable moments there, including the single season hit record at the time. But now that he's been in Hiroshima for the past few years. Definitely not reaching those same heights anymore, but still a guy that can string together a lot of singles. Shota Suikane, another one of these kind of 3 true outcomes, but not even, because he doesn't really walk much. It's basically strikeout or home run with him. He definitely swings for the fences. Very high ceiling, but a very low floor. Masaya Yano, excellent defender at shortstop, not much of a hitter. You also have Kaito Kozono, who they've tried at shortstop, second base, and now he's the starting third baseman. Honestly, guys like Yano, Kozono, even Ryosuke Kikuchi, the second baseman, they're not really bad in a vacuum. They can definitely add a lot to the team with, hitting for contact and stringing, deep at bats and kind of making the pitcher work. But it's just like the Carp have so many of these kind of similar caliber bats that are always going to be just around league average at best, and they don't give you much in the way of pop. And so I think it's really hard for this team to string together, big rallies, because they might get, a few guys on base, but they just didn't have that big bat to drive them all in. And that's where, someone like Montero or Fabian this year, or hopefully, Suikane, if he can take a step forward, that's where these guys really need to shine and give Shogo Sakakura a little bit of help. Pitching leaders, this is where the team definitely shined. Daichi Osera, Hiroki Tokoda, Masato Morishita, kind of a big 3 in their rotation. Interestingly enough, guys like Tokoda and Osera, well below average when you look at things like strikeout rate minus walk rate, which is very indicative of future success. So, definitely some room to bake in regression, but they do play really good defense and they position well. So I think that helped these guys, despite being kind of pitch to contact guys. Masato Morishita, I do think, is the true ace of this team in terms of the most upside. Shogo Tamamura, Makoto Adwa, some other guys that they will be expecting to be in the rotation again this year. And then they have some good bullpen pieces. Taylor Hearn was great. Big lefty arm there. Atsuya Horie is a ground ball machine. Roji Kuribayashi, he's the closer. 38 saves last year with a sub-2 ERA. He's had some even better years in the past. Won Rookie of the Year back in 2021. Daisuke Moriura, also good. Takumi Kurohara was in the Rookie of the Year conversation. Sotaro Shimauchi can throw hard. So definitely in terms of bullpen depth, they have a lot of it. Let's see how this team lines up, though, on the field. So catcher, Shogo Sakakura is the main guy, obviously, but they also have a veteran like Tsubasa Aizawa, who can still play some solid defense. Ishihara also is there. First base, again, they really didn't get much of anything last year, but Montero, they're going to be banking on him to, at least be able to kind of do what Matt Davidson did for them a couple of years ago, maybe like 15 to 20 homers, despite having a lower on base and a lower average. They do have, a veteran like Dobayashi there that can always slide in, though. Middle infield duo defensively is still great, Kikuchi and Yano, but again, offensively, you're not really getting a lot out of those. Kaito Kozono at third, maybe if he continues what he showed at the Premier 12, when he hit multiple home runs, then that's a step forward for him offensively. But, he's more of just kind of a makes a lot of contact type guy, not really much in the way of quality of contact. He's also not a great defender. So that's a little bit weak there when it comes to the offense in the infield. Outfield, Shota Suikane, Shogo Akiyama, and Sandro Fabian. I do think Noma, even though I have him penciled in here as more of a fourth outfielder, he's probably going to feature more prominently. Shinsuke Tamada also is a top prospect that many fans are hoping can take a step forward. Outfield, I think, is much better when it comes to the consistency you're getting with the bats. Akiyama and, Noma, like I said, what you're going to get from them. And then Suikane and Fabian, you just hope you can catch lightning in a bottle with them and they can put some more balls over the fence. Overall, though, I think you can see this team just does not have enough star hitters. Outside of Sakakura, everyone is pretty much a role player, which I think does work, kind of in a greater than the sum of their parts sort of way, but they definitely need some other guys to step up if they want to score more runs. Starting rotation, as I mentioned, Morishita, Tokoda, Osera, that's a pretty reliable front 3. I like Tamamura as well. Ottawa, not as much. I don't really think his stuff plays that well, but he's okay to eat innings. Dominguez, again, coming in here, first year for him, so we'll see what he can do. Hayato Tsunohiro, their number 1 pick from 2 years ago, got a cup of coffee last year. We'll see if he can break out here in 2025. And then in the bullpen, I think this is probably the team's biggest strength. Roji Kuribayashi, Sotaro Shimauchi, Daisuke Moriura, these are definitely some shutdown arms, and they have some depth there as well. So this team, if they're going to win, they have to punch above their weight and overperform the projections. A lot of kind of pitching to contact and just winning with defense and kind of clutch, timely hitting. We used to call this, Carp devil magic in the community last year, just because this team had no business being in the pennant race, and yet they were all the way up until the end when regression really hit them like a truck. Expectations, I think most people are going to have them close to, last place, but, Takahiro Arai, the manager, ever since he's taken over, has proven time and time again that he can get the most out of these players, more so than you see on paper. So we will see what we get from the Hiroshima Carp in 2025.